Hola, piloncillos. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of the Offerings of Copal podcast. This is your host, Cihua Mazatl. And today we are recording from the California Center for the Arts in Escondido for the special episode of Chicana, San Diego, which is a special exhibition featuring Chicana artists here in this beautiful large space. We will be uploading some pictures for you to see in the show notes so you can follow along with this episode. Today, I am joined by our returning guest, Tekpatl Patricia Cruz. And for those that don't know her or aren't acquainted with her, you can check out our prior episode where we talked at lengths about Chicana art and just art and showing up for community. It's a truly beautiful plática, and I highly encourage you all to check it out, especially if you enjoy our plática today. And yeah, I'm going to pass it over to Patricia so she can tell us a little bit more about the Chicana San Diego Art Show, what it is, why it's important, and bueno, pues.
Hi, everyone. So I want to start with referencing the Chicana show that began at El Camino College in LA. I think it's important to reference the show, mostly because we see the need of having a Chicana show. So when I first was contacted by Dulce Stein, actually I had to contact her, and I said it was so hard to find her email. I don't know why, but it was. And I finally found it. I sent her an email and I let her know. I wrote her and I said, "Hey, Dulce, Miss Stein." I didn't say Dulce at the time. I said, "Miss Stein, I'm a Chicana artist from San Diego, California. And, we have been putting on Chicana shows since 2012. And myself and other women would love to be involved, and be a part of this show in LA because it is rare, for me at least, aside from the Cheech Museum where you're going to get Chicana art. It is so rare to see something that is so focused. And so, which is why we do our own Chicana show in San Diego since 2012. So when I wrote her this email, I was like, I have to either myself or other Chicana women artists get into the show. We have to be a part of this. Like it's what we do and it's what we've been doing for such a long time. And so I was in the show in LA, and then Dulce was like, "Oh, you're from San Diego," and she was excited about, the murals in the park, in Chicano Park. And she's like, "Can you bring some of those muralists down? Can you build that bridge, really?" And so what happened with this show here in Escondido is she called one day and she said, "We're having a show in Escondido." And I said, "We are?" And she said, "Yeah, we're bringing the Chicana show and it's going to be Chicana San Diego in Escondido. I need you to invite all the Chicana artists that you know." And so I created an invite. I emailed a lot of the San Diego artists that I know. There's a lot of San Diego artists here that I don't know, but I emailed them and then we started to build the show. And, I'm not a curator in this case. Dulce is, and she started to curate the show. And it was amazing. It was amazing to see how many Chicana artists are out there. And so that's really the short history of how the show came about. Now, keep in mind that a lot of the show is also artists from LA, I think some from the Bay Area. So it's a beautiful collection of artwork in this institution. And the hope is that, it goes further. But, it's this show is about 240 artists or more or so. And each artist has maybe one or two pieces. Some have four. How many pieces do you have, Siwa? Five pieces in the show. I elected to have one because it's the one I'm proud of right now. But it's a beautiful thing to see the walls, and we've talked about this. We've talked about the floodgates opening or the gates opening and being flooded by artwork that is being made and needs to be seen. And that's why there's 200 some artists in the show. We have all been, I would assume, to galleries and spaces where you have a 20-foot wall and there's 5 pieces on that wall. And here you have a 20-foot wall with 15 pieces on it. So that just gives you an idea and a visual of how packed this show is, and how it also, when you go through the show, some of the pieces have dates on them, and there's a beautiful collection in there from self-help graphics from some of the very first Chicana artist women in the LA area. Some of the most, known and most renowned. And so I highly encourage people, because it's not just like, oh, we're the artist of the time. There's history there that is important because they have paved the way.
Thank you so much for providing more about the history and the context of the show and why it's important. For those that don't know, Escondido's in California. The show is running until November 2nd, right?
Mhm.
And so we highly encourage you all to take an opportunity to come on out here if you can, make it a day trip, take a road trip with your pals and come on down and check it out, because it's important. Exhibitions like these are historic. They capture energy, they capture history, especially with everything going on right now in these times. And it's interesting, right before we started the show, we went into the gallery and talking to our guest artist that is present with us today, that you'll get to hear from a little later. And we talked about, how, our danza, for some of us, we practice danza azteca or danza mexica, and how some of our practices are canceled because of, fears over being taken. And it really kind of dampened our spirits, but it also reaffirms the importance of these spaces, and that, despite that, we're here, despite that, where we can, well, we also have the privilege to be able to come out here and listen to a plática, host a plática, and no matter what, even if these things are happening, we're not silencing our voices. And so, thank you all for joining us. For those online, we also have an audience here. I don't know if everybody wants to say hi. Hi. And so we have a live audience for this special episode. So grab your tea, or go do your laundry, whatever you need to do as you listen to this beautiful plática. The way we're going to structure it is that myself and Patricia will be discussing some interesting topics about chicanisma, what we're calling it chicanisma, Chicana art, and then we're going to actually take a walk through the gallery and have our guest artists speak about their artwork. And so, again, make sure that you refer to the PDF in the show notes to follow along with the art that is being shown. For our live audience, they get to see it live. And, Patricia and I will also speak on our artwork as well. And so that's the plan. So settle in and let's begin.
Yeah, and we also
Okay.
have some leftover questions from the panel that we did. So we had 6 guests in our panel, and we have 28 questions.
I was
26.
rather,
Yeah,
yes,
my
overachieving.
overachiever, ambitious
Yes.
Chicana artist here. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to pull from those cards some of the questions to answer them that the panelists didn't get to answer. So some of them are tough. Some of them are 2 parts. Like, this is going to go fast, but that's the plan.
Hopefully fast.
We printed them like oracle cards, so so that we can pull them, because
Yeah.
it's just part of the magic.
Yes. You can't have a feminine centered perspective without bringing in a little bit of the mystery and the magic,
Right.
So
Spirituality.
the
Yeah.
spirituality. So
Let's do it.
okay.
You go first.
Bueno. Okay. Okay. The question here is, what do you hope future generations will inherit from Chicana art of this era? I think that's a great question. And okay, so I think first it's what defines this era? What do you think?
Oh,
What are our current struggles as Chicanas, Chicanics people?
well, I mean, the current, politics, obviously, although I feel like we're living in a time where it's so in your face and so blatant, but it's always been there. It's always been there. And so I don't know what the era is, because I think back at the history of the Chicano movement, and I think of how Chicano movement was birthed out of this need, to have something more for ourselves and to have a place of belonging. And so I think for me, the era feels like the birth of that to now. That's what the era feels like for me, you know?
Well, the birth is, what the, so almost like the terminology, it is born, but now I think it's almost about acceptance. You and I talk about this a lot, is the hesitancy of being able to say, I'm a Chicana artist as opposed to Latina or Hispanic or even just like Mexican. There's so much, like, the term itself is so loaded, and there's a lot of people that don't really understand, the definition of even that, but I think more and more people are starting to claim it, so now it's more, are we in an era of initiation, or, the word, I like what you and Lucas say about like self-determination,
Mhm.
because it's no longer, I feel like it's no longer of, hey, look at us, we're here. Oh no, it's very obvious that we're here, but it's now, this is who we are. It's starting to tell people, no, you can't define us, you can't tell us who we are. It's more, we know who we are, and it looks like this.
Right. It's so hard because I also think all the time we encounter people where we have to meet people where they're at. And so Lucas and I talk about this all the time, that it's, some people may be ready to be political, or some people may be ready to be connecting more maybe with their indigenous roots, or whatever that may be, however that looks for everyone. But to me, it just feels like you will always encounter someone where you're like, oh, I have to meet you where you're at, and that's okay. And even though it's hard to get a measurement on the movement and where it's at, unless you look at specific leaders and the work that they're doing and specific organizations, because it is a political movement, it is an indigenous movement, it's a lot of things. But when we talk about everyday people, and we talk about, like, people who come into my shop, I may think I have a good measurement of what Chicana means, but that doesn't mean that it's true.
Mm.
That's not true for everyone. Everyone has a story of their own. And so it's hard for me to gauge that and to try to measure it as a birth, because for some people, the birth of the Chicano movement is not a historic like timeline. It's very much when you discover, and it lights that fire within you. So that's what that's what is like, to me, it's like we can measure it historically, but we can't measure it spiritually, because people are being awakened every day,
Mm.
you know? So it's like,
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way of seeing it. I think, when it comes to the art, it's like I I keep seeing like Chicana Park, as we're having this conversation. And Chicana Park, for those that don't know, is a I feel the pressure having to define Chicano Park in front of you guys. But it is a beautiful park in San Diego that, was a park that was essentially promised, and then they changed it up on everybody and decided they were going to make a junkyard there. And, the people rose up and fought. And this was all happening simultaneously with some other struggles that other Chicanos were having across the country, right? With
correct.
Yes.
So
I'm now
on
looking at
April
you, making sure
22nd,
that I get it correct.
on April 22nd, 1970, the community took over the park. They had been promised a park. The bridge, the Coronado Bridge, which breaks up the neighborhood, came in before the park was created. And so the community was very upset, because of the building, because they were building this bridge in the late 1960s, somewhere in the 1960s. I don't know the exact date. A lot of people had to leave their homes they owned, so that this bridge could be built over to Coronado Island in San Diego. And so they were upset, because their neighborhoods were broken up. There were highways now in the middle of the neighborhoods. And so, people used to be able to access what is like Julian Avenue over to Logan Avenue by just walking. Now there's a whole freeway in the middle of that. And so in 1970, on April 22nd, there was a student and he was on his way to City College. And his name is Mario Solis. And Mario Solis stopped because he saw there was construction being made. There was some construction there, construction workers, all kinds of stuff was happening. And he goes over and he says, "Oh, we're so glad that you're building our park that we were promised." And the construction worker then says to him, "Oh, this isn't a park. We're building the parking lot for the highway police station, which is going to be in this building, or which was in the building. I'm not even sure, but they were building this parking lot." And so he goes and he says, "Oh, that's okay." So he goes down to City College and he tells the professors, and then, the Chicano studies professors there, all the Chicanos and a lot of other people came out, not just professors and educators, but community and activists and even families, people who weren't activists came out and defended the park. And there was a 12-day takeover of the park. And so to this day, the people who make the decisions in the park are the Chicano Park Steering Committee, which was formed, I think, the day after the takeover. But people tied themselves to the bulldozers. People got beat up. Like it's a whole thing. And so
Thank you
that's
so much. I would not have been able to explain it in that way. I'm so glad that I'm with the people that can explain the history of the park. And for those that want to learn more, there's also a cool documentary on YouTube that tells you everything. But the reason I mention it is that, this was happening simultaneously with other movements in the country. And when you go to Chicano Park, it's full of murals that document, the the takeover, the struggle of the people, the context of like the history of that time. And so, getting back to this question is, what do future generations hope to inherit from Chicana art of this era? I feel like, when we think back, to such a historic place like Chicano Park, the art there is very political. It's very much like this is the struggle, this is the stand. And walking through this exhibition, looking through the art right now, there are aspects, within the art that is about the struggle. It is about how we show up. It is political, but there's also aspects of this art that tell you a lot more. There's stories of joy, there's stories of sadness, there's stories of reclamation. There's if it's different. It's no longer we have to fight to exist. It's we exist, we're here, witness us. It's different. It's a different message, I think, the art that is coming out now. I think maybe, one can say because this is like a feminine, centered art experience, or like the perspective, maybe those are the female voices or the feminine voices are this of like beauty existence, or I don't want to like gender cast or stereotype it that way necessarily, but they're I don't know, I feel like it feels different than that necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, it's people have to come see this. Is there's so many different mediums and there's so many different takes on what Chicana is. And it's interesting, right? Like you're invited to a Chicana show. It's like, what are you going to show? What are you going? The artist got to select whatever they wanted to submit, and then this is what they wanted to show. So in every piece, you're going to find that it's rooted in chicanisma. Like it's rooted in some form of spirituality, some form of connection to the roots, some form of lucha, which is important. We've talked about this before, where Chicana is political and it is indigenous, and so we don't have to, like, I said this last time. We don't have to say, "Oh, I'm indigenous. I'm an indigenous Chicana." Like, no, Chicana is that. We get to see these pieces, and we get to see so closely and so intimately what the artists are portraying and are choosing to bring as either their celebration or their struggle or both. And that's a beautiful thing. You're not gonna find that, I think, in brown skin in any other kind of art. Like that's, that's for me, like when I see a piece, because I am, a darker shade of brown, I see a person, an image of a diosa or whoever that is that's brown, I feel like they're portraying me, and I'm like, wow, like it's beautiful to be able to see myself in that. It's a celebration.
Mm. That's beautiful. So I think the answer here is celebration. No? And I
Yeah,
ended
I
it like
think
that.
so.
Yeah.
I think so. I just, there's a lot of lucha. There's always going to be lucha, but the celebration is also a part of that, and it's so much bigger because
Yeah.
it's a different kind of joy. Lucha is like a resistance,
Mm.
and the celebration is almost like this different kind of feeling of like, look at me, like I'm here, we're here, you're here, the child is here, like, there's it's just, I don't know.
I think that's also the spirit of resistance. I think that's why our people are still here. There's this idea, that like, oh, our people are conquered, or, there's the indigenous people aren't there anymore. It's like that it's dead. The Aztecs don't exist. All these terrible things that are said, but no cierto. It's how can you say that? You know.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I think the thing that has kept us going is the celebration. Is I mean, you see it all the time. It's like when something happens to this madre, ahí viene la banda. You bring your music with you, and it's dancing, or
hmm,
even the protests and stuff going on now. What are people doing? They're dancing and they're singing.
yeah.
Hmm.
It's a beautiful part of the culture.
I think we did. Do you think we did justice to that question? Yes. Yes. Pick another one. It's your turn.
Oh man. Okay, guys, everyone's gonna raise their hand. I want to say something about this. What gender challenges have you faced as a Chicana artist, and how have you transformed them into strength? Okay. I always tell s- young artists, especially I'm going to say this, especially young women who are coming to paint at Chicano Park. I always tell women this. The Chicana movement is a movement within the Chicano movement because there are so many generations of artists, male artists in my experience. And women, I mean, women can also, not have good boundaries. But in my experience, it has been the men, the older men of older generations who have been like, "Oh, you're so beautiful. I'm going to paint you." Or, "Oh, did you paint that?" Or, "Are you the artist for this?" Or, like all of these unnecessary questions. And, "Oh, we should go have a drink." Or, "Oh, I'm a Chicano Park muralist. Like, do you know who I am?" It goes on forever. And I have had my share of like having to be a bitch back and be like, I'm a Chicano Park muralist too, you know? And it's like, or, like, are you supposed to be drinking while you're up on that scaffold? You know what I mean? Like just these pieces of like, and it's one of those things where like we need to teach our young daughters, not just whether you're an artist or not, but we need to teach our young daughters to push back on these people who don't have boundaries. And so I feel like, duality is important. It is important to, if you have a male partner, it's important to have that respect for them. Well, it doesn't matter what kind of partner you have, right? Like have that respect. But in this case, we're talking about like machismo,
Mm.
gender. So it's like have respect enough to know how your duality makes you stronger. And many times that can be very hard to do as a Chicana artist when you have been, sexually harassed. That's a very difficult thing to do. And so what I found that worked for me was just to be a bitch back. Like that's it.
Mm.
Like if you're going to say something inappropriate, I'm going to call you on it. And I have had other women come to me and say, "What do I do? This person is being inappropriate." And I say, "Call them out. Call them out." Like you don't have to go online and cancel people. You can have a direct conversation and say, "Hey, that's not cool and I don't appreciate it. Don't do it again." And or you can bring someone with you to help you do that. And I feel like this the second half of this, like how have you transformed them into strength? It's like I I have luckily learned how to speak up for myself. And that doesn't happen for every woman. It doesn't happen for everyone. But we have to. This is if you are going to be an artist or you are going to be exposed to people who don't have boundaries, you have to. And if you don't know how to place those boundaries, find someone that can help you place them because, or talk to that person and say, hey, that's not cool. Because we have for too long allowed too many things and it's just not okay. It's not okay. So I have learned, and I think, you know, I I I went to the park in 2012. I'm born and raised in San Diego, in that area, about 8 minutes away from Barrio Logan, in a different barrio, Shelltown. But when I went in 2012 and nobody knew who I was, or they were like, "Oh, she's just a volunteer. She's here to help," or whatever. I got that a lot, and I got to see it firsthand, and it's not healthy and it's not good. And when we did the restoration, 2023, Lucas, 22 when we did the restoration of 2023, and my husband Lucas Cruz here, he was the chairman of the Chicana Park Steering Committee. He, for the first time ever, there was a sexual harassment form that people had to sign, men and women. And it's one of these things where like he has heard all of the stories, not from just me being his wife, but from other women who have been like, oh, and it's not just the artists in the park, it's men in general. Like imagine you have this beautiful wall to paint and you're standing there trying to paint it and there's just men watching you. Like it's disgusting. Some I get it if you're just watching, but when they're checking you out, it's like that is not cool. So like there were cases where like people needed security because whatever dude kept coming by, and it's like, hey, you can't be doing that, man. Leave her alone. We put up tarp walls, and it's ridiculous. But for the first time ever, there was a sexual harassment form that some of the older artists had an issue with, and that just shows you the harassment form said, if you sexually harass someone and you continue to do it, we will halt your mural. And they were like, oh, that seems extreme. And it's like, no, just do what the fuck you got to do. It's not extreme. I'm sorry, Camila. It's not. I just get so worked up because I have seen
Yes.
it. I have seen it over and over. And it's one of those things where like find your voice, go to someone that can help you find your voice. That's all I can say about that. Like
I feel like this topic is so loaded, but I think it's important. I think there's so many ways that you can look at it as well. There's for me personally, like I put myself out there a lot online, in online spaces, and I think there's also so much pressure, you know, to if you've got if you're in in this kind of body, out in online spaces, you're sort of expected to sell your body in a lot of ways. And I don't mean like literally like selling it, but it's like if you put out a like a painting, it's like you got to show some cleavage, or you got to show yourself a certain way, or sell your sexuality, alongside your work. And I feel like it's frustrating. I think I don't, I personally don't want people to like my stuff, or you're following me because you want to look at me. I want you to like my art. I want you to, to consider what I put out there seriously. And I think if I was in a different kind of body, you know, my ideas would be taken more seriously. It's, you know, the patriarchy. There's so much to talk about, but I feel like, I can share an idea, and we've all heard like the mansplaining. It's like someone may repeat the idea, and I'm like, I just said that. And I'm not taken seriously because, I'm a woman, or, or my intellectual ideas, I'm not taken like, you're not going to do it because I'm a woman. I'm like, no, bitch, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna do it all, But I think my biggest struggle is I feel like I would be a more successful artist if I was willing to sell more of my body. And I've seen other artists, that I feel like have like stepped on my intellectual toes, taken pieces of what I do and like blow up because they they pair it with their sexuality, and I'm just not willing to go there, and it's not even like, and it's no shame, because also, like, if you want to, like, I think there's power in embracing your sexuality and putting it out there, but I just don't necessarily like what else comes with that. And a lot of the times I work with, like, when I do my healing circles or I do my work, I primarily work with other like women or non-binary people because it feels safer. I've tried to offer my services, to men, and unfortunately, first session in or second session in, like, oh, I really like you, or I think you're so. I'm just like, don't do it again, or we're done. And it's just really unfortunate that you can't put yourself out there and separate your work from your body. And I can't paint my naked women without it becoming sexual. Why does it always have to be sexual?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
now I'm angry.
No, yeah. I mean, it's a tough topic because, of course, like everyone is free to do what they want, and I would say this: if what you want to do, whether it's sexualized or not, feels like you are holding on to your integrity, then do it. Then do it.
Mhm.
Everyone has a different idea of how they want to what they want to do. I'm very conservative. Like you will see me in a turtleneck during summer and like all the time, all the time. Like I'm always covered up. It's just my thing. It's how I like to show up, you know? And if I see a woman who, is showing up differently, like good for you. Like,
Mhm.
you know, I think in these spaces and as artists, like I have seen women complain about the advances that they're getting from men, but then use the advances to, get them to help them or get them to show them something or whatever. I mean, we have seen this, and I go like this to Myra because Myra and I have talked about it, like or the men think like, oh, if I do this with so and so, Myra will also you know take a bite of it and be okay with that, But it's all about integrity. Like you show up how you want to show up, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't trying to throw dirt on
No, no, no,
anyone,
no.
not at all. Like,
But it exists.
yeah, I just, you know, I think if I felt like we were more free in our bodies, like not that we're not free and we can go out and we can embrace it, and but there is this like there is the fear of your boundaries being violated.
Oh yeah.
Even and it's happened to me. It's happened to like the majority of women. I don't think there's like a single woman or someone in a feminine body that hasn't experienced some type of harassment or violation of boundaries just because you're in your body. And so it is a double-edged sword. It's you want to adorn yourself, you want to be beautiful, you want to show all of you, but at the same time, it doesn't always feel safe. And it's unfortunate that the gendered challenges for us are about safety. Are about, and it's just not fair. It's just not fair that we're in year 2025. Our rights are being taken away. All these things are happening, and that we're still here, that we haven't, learned as a collective.
Yeah.
That makes me sad.
Yeah, it is a sad thing, but
Mm,
again, like show up how you want, and do know that in some spaces that's safe, and in others there isn't. Like you just have to calculate,
yeah.
Yeah.
Going to church.
Yeah.
You dress a certain way right? For
Okay.
a sacred place or,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
work to Yeah. But I think it starts from like home. It's like, sorry. I'm Alma Rosa. So I think it starts from home. I think that find it really important for us to teach our kids and also be direct with like the older generation, like our elders. And I think it really starts from stemming from there. I grew up really conservative, and so I get where you're coming from. And you're coming from. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, but not everyone has that, and so it doesn't mean that it's right. It just means like we learned it differently. But I doesn't have like a conservative home, or even parents sometimes. Like many people don't have parents to show them what conservative looks like, or boundaries, right? Like maybe you can dress like that this time, or if you're going to go to a party with your friends, yes, or like it's just so complicated.
I mean,
That's why at the end of the day, like the integrity part, if it feels good to you, you can do that.
I mean, it sucks. I
Just be
think that
safe.
it stifles your expression, your ability, like if you want to walk out, however you want, like looking like a goddess y todo, like you should be able to do that, without fear. But I think even in safe spaces, I've been in sacred spaces. I've been, something that nobody wants to talk about and you get blacklisted for. It's like in danza communities, there's a lot of sexual harassments and problems. And in churches, all these spaces, like it doesn't matter how like right it's supposed to be, it's there. It's the shadow, it's the underpinning of the society, and we're seeing it in their bigger picture right now.
Just to clarify where I was coming from, it was more to say that we as a culture, especially here in the United States, sexualize and objectify women, and that's where I'm coming from. Like I have such a struggle with that, like objecting, like if I'm being objectified, or if I were, it's, I think it's like changing the perspective on women and like how we look at them. And it's everywhere. It's propaganda, it's in the movies, and it's hard. Sometimes you feel the pressure to do that and be like, but it comes down to integrity, and that's really important too as well. Like I could say I'm one to like struggle with that, constantly like swaying with my integrity, and like I'm like, I just want people to like my art, and same thing. Do I have to like dress this way or talk this way? Because I feel like we're all, or just in general, when it comes to people, I feel like there's clones everywhere. Like people are starting to like look the same and talk the same. And, like, can I give an example of the Kardashians? You know that little tone that they have? And then you hear that little tone, I feel like we're like losing our authenticity on it. And so, yeah, just to clarify that, integrity is the big thing on that I struggle with.
That's funny because Siwa and I were just this is our third gathering, and the past two I was like, what are you gonna wear? What are you gonna wear? I don't know. And then today we didn't plan. We were like, not like we were matching. We just wanted to know. And then today I was like, this is what I'm gonna wear. I would rather wear all black and wear my dogs because we're gonna be in air conditioning, so it's all good, And then, but it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, like how you show up matters to you more than anyone else. So
Yeah. It's I just feel like you can't separate the artist from how the artist shows up. Also, especially nowadays, social media, it's like kind of inseparable. I mean, but you should be authentic, regardless of whether you should be authentic. But especially like in institutionalized spaces, it's I feel it's kind of like code switching. You kind of have to code switch. It's just a part of navigating this world. Unfortunately, it's just we have to engage that way. I mean, no one can force you. Like ultimately, you can say like "fuck you, fuck this," and like I'm gonna show up by whatever, But
that's the best part about being an artist.
That's true, though.
I mean, I said this in the past, like, call yourself an artist, and nobody's gonna give a shit what you wear, how you look, what you're doing, if you're too cosmic, if you're too grounded, if you're too dreamy, like no one's gonna
Yeah,
care.
sometimes
They'll
you
just be
just
like,
go on
oh,
your
she's an
chanquitas.
artist.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. Where are we at?
We have some time. It was my turn to pick one.
Yeah.
But for those listening, if you have comments, leave comments on the video, or not the video, the podcast. If you're listening on YouTube or wherever you're listening to, drop us your comments. We're interested in hearing your perspective. Anybody else have anything to say before we move on, audience? My favorite question. All right. Coming from cultures where art is everywhere, murals, artesanías, music, and often reduced to a souvenir or tourist attraction, how do you negotiate between art as common, quote unquote, and art as high or institutional? And so I really like this question. I wrote this question thinking about, all the travels. Most people think of Mexican art, it's very commodified. When we go down to Mexico, the artesanías that you buy from people, like, you don't realize how long it takes these individuals to create the artesanía. It's arte, like it is art, but it's made by hand. And yet we will sit there and we will haggle with them. I'm not going to say we, 'cause I don't do that. But but I have in the past when I was like younger and unradicalized, still colonized. But and we've all done it. It's one of those like, oh, can I have it for 10 pesos, like 50 cents? Like we don't want to pay 50 cents more. Like it's just so sad that we look at artesanías and, we look at the art that our people make and we just see it as something that is to be consumed or brought and just to be given away, despite how many hours, days, years. Our lovely artist here is wearing this beautiful huipil that's like woven. It looks like it's a waist telar woven. Is it de cintura?
Yeah, y es a punto de cruz.
Okay.
And it was costly, which I completely understand because it took months to make. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah. It's beautiful, and you can tell the quality. A lot of people, they go down to Mexico and they want a huipil. This is how you tell that it's like hand stitched. This one, for example, is made by máquina. It's like a bigger like telar. This is not like handmade like this. This is literally someone making it by hand. But the difference in price is going to be obvious. This little detail part is made by hand. You could tell if you flip the garment inside out, you can see how they stitched it. But you'll be able to tell the difference in price. And yet we go and we try and like haggle. But this is like people's livelihoods, and this is their artwork that they've learned for generations and generations. And here we're trying to commodify. Did you hear about those huaraches that artists?
Oh, I was so disappointed.
The Chicano artist. There you go.
So disappointed. I was willing to buy $100 t-shirt if I had $100 for a t-shirt. But when I saw the huaraches, it was like, man, what a.
You tell people in case they don't.
Yeah. So there's this artist, Willy Chavaria, and he had an amazing Chicano, very, very Chicano-like aesthetic. And, he was doing a good job. Like some people didn't agree because he was taking things like that looked like Ben Davis and then, just making them more like his style and then putting them on the runway. For me, I love fashion. So I was following him and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I wouldn't agree to pay $200. It's obviously not made for the people. It's made, to me, in my mind, I thought this is made to take up space in the fashion world on the runway. It's not made for me to buy. I'll just go to, around our house, it's a Happy Young Apparel, and buy, whatever if I wanted that look, But then he made these huaraches that are the exact same way the artesanos make them, this exact same pattern the artesanos made them. And I also have to say he didn't make them. somebody at Adidas made them. And then it was, sealing their intellectual property, and not just intellectual property. It's ancestral. It's traditional. It's all of the things. And so that's that.
Yeah.
So that I was just like, yeah, that bad move, and it's what it is. But, I also think like it's such a fine line because it's fashion. Like I absolutely don't agree with what you did. But when I say it's a fine line, it's like, yeah, people are going to push and push and push. And there's no idea that's going to be that original, that is going to be that beautiful. Like a lot of the traditional things have already been made. A lot of the most beautiful things that take time to make, like masterminds have already figured those out. And I don't know, that's just my take on it.
Well, I think it's a relevant thing that happened in this, in light of this question, because we're talking about, how so many of our art forms get commodified or get seen as less than because we just see it in the street. We have this expectation that Chicano art or Mexican art, or whatever art on this continent, except for the United States and Canada, but down south is worth less.
Mhm.
Like worthless. Even just thinking about worthless, that word is terrible. Like, well, I said two words, but together, that's kind of how we've come to, like, collectively, that's kind of how people view it. And they want our culture, they want the colors, they want all these things in their homes. They just don't want to pay for it. So what's the difference between that, something that took so many hours, days, weeks to make, and then in the art that's hanging on these walls?
That's a hard question for me. I think as a collective, we have seen more and more Chicano art be the, be put up higher on like the institutional, this deserves to be here,
Yeah.
but I don't paint to be in the institution. So that's hard. That's a hard question for me because, I'm someone who, my most amazing pieces live in Chicano Park and they're free. They're free to view. And some of my pieces I have gone as far as donating because I'm not trying to be in the institution. And so it doesn't matter, like in my world and in my mind as a Chicana artist, it doesn't matter what the institution thinks. If the institution is like, oh, we'll invite you, cool, I'm here. Like, I'm going to take up space. I'm here, but based on like my principles and the literature that I've read and the ideas that come from someone like Corky Gonzalez, it's like, it is my duty to paint for my people. And if my people don't have access to that institution, I may not paint for it at all. I want people to be able to view my work. And in my case, that means that I have to paint in my barrio. In my case, it means that I have to paint and possibly, take the art piece and print it on a shirt so that more people have access to it. Print it make 8x10 prints and then someone can afford it. Like, it just looks different. It looks different. And I think it's about what worth you're going to give your own work. At the end of the day, you got to decide, are you going to be an artist who, wants to sell everything, which is amazing if you can sell everything. But is that the goal?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the goal? Like, that's not my goal. I can't be that artist because I'm painting for my people. And my people are not going to necessarily spend thousands of dollars on my work. Some have, but that's not everyone, And so it's like, so to give my work worth and or expect someone else to give it that worth, like, yeah, it's disappointing when, institutions aren't allowing us in the space like this institution is and saying, hey, we want to see your work, it deserves to be here. That's disappointing because, we're always on that rat race, right? We're always trying to get there. Like, as an artist, yeah, you're ambitious, you're trying to get there, you want people to see your work, but will the purpose of your work have the same impact if your people aren't viewing it? Or it has a different impact, right? Because now you're showcasing some of our cultura to people who may never see it. And that's an amazing thing. But, in my case, I'm like, I'm like Corky Gonzalez says in El Plan Espiritual de Aslan, that artists have a huge role to play in society. And if we're going to build a stronger Aslan and a stronger Chicano movement, we have a responsibility to paint for our people and to paint what is happening at this time.
I think that's amazing. Like I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it is about exclusivity. Institutions are an extension of this capitalist machine. And I said that in the institution. Take that.
It's
But it there's a strange dichotomy in these spaces, when it comes to art. It's, you want art to be seen, these institutions are for art to be seen, yet at the same time they're a machine that pumps out this exclusivity. I think it has a lot to do also with like education. Like, what is highbrow art is, it's taking art to a degree of, what's the composition, the palette, and looking at the different components of the art in an intellectual way and less in an expressive way. And I think with like Chicano art, a lot of us are self-taught, a lot of us are generational artists, and I think there's an abundance of art when it comes to our people. I think our most abundant resource is creativity. I've said this before, continue to say it. It is one of those things that it was what we used to barter with. It was our trade. Our trade was art. Oh, I need a new olla, a new pot, and you need this new, I don't know, jade bracelet, whatever it may be. And that's what we used to barter. We used to barter the arts. And so we're so abundant in art that not only is the art crawling up the walls here in this exhibition, but literally in the murals in Chicana Park, all the murals. And when you go to Mexico, art is literally everywhere. It is just a part of life. You tell someone in Mexico you're an artist, it's like, eh. I'm like, okay, ¿Y qué? And what?
Yeah.
And what? Like, when I tell my family that I don't think they understand like what it means. Like, it's radical, but it's also not. It's also like, pues su primo puede dibujar, or like everybody here, like, it's just no one sees it as like serious, because it's like it feels like it's almost the easiest thing to turn to, but I think it is the differentiation is being self-taught and, yeah, like expressive versus academic, but you can be both, but it's
Yeah,
yeah.
you can be both. I mean, there's space for everyone and everyone's ideals and everyone's integrity, and where you want to place what you want to place. I think the difference is in this Chicana show, I personally have an expectation that most of the artists here are, one, painting or creating something cultural, even if it's more modern or if it's more like even like, forward thinking, like, but it has a cultural theme to it. And so my expectation is when I see a Chicana show, that I'm going to see, like we said earlier, celebration, lucha, culture. These pieces, they have to come into a space. If I were to show up to a Chicana show that didn't have any of those, and maybe it was just, like pretty flowers, I would be confused. I would be confused. And it's okay. Like, maybe there are Chicanas out there who are painting pretty flowers, but I hope that the word Chicana, when you attach that to who you are, and you self-declare that it really comes from a place of like understanding the Chicano movement. Because a lot of us, I've seen so many people call themselves Chicanos and Chicanas, and that's fine, but then it's like, where is the political piece? Don't forget about that. And where is the indigenous piece? And, or, are you really going to try to be a Chicano who's going to vote for so and so? You know what I mean? It's like, come on, like, if that's the case,
It's like
then
self-betrayal. Yeah.
then you need to rethink that self-declaration, like rethink that. And I'm not saying that people need to know all the history or people need to be super activist, but you need to know that the word Chicano Chicana was born, that movement was born out of like self-determination and doing things for our people and giving back to our people. So I don't know. It's just that's why the institutional piece, like, yeah, we're here. We're here. And I've worked for institutions, and it's like I bring my chicanisma with me no matter what. Like you are not gonna be able to unsee this. Like I gotta take up space. I don't hide my tattoos. I can't hide my brown skin. I can't hide my indigenous features. Like this is what it is. Yeah.
I think in regards to how we negotiate between art, as common or high or institutional, it I think that some of the classifications need to change. I think, art has always been undefinable. It's like even within like academia, like what is art? Like, yeah, we're going to be here for 5 hours now, trying to define what it is, and it's always in like framed within rules, yet so that you could break these rules. But if you never really adopted these rules in the first place, you're just painting from this soulful place, which is really like its purpose. I don't think the first peoples in the world, when they were painting in the caves, were like, oh, where's my horizon line? And like, let me adjust the perspective. Like, no, but I think that's also the beauty in like the craft and the technique and like taking it a certain way. But I think ultimately, it is about painting from this place that is free from these other things. I think that's the foundation. I think that is where it should be, so I don't know. Like, yeah, I think that's my final take on that.
I just want to say something for the people here and for the listeners. I want to say this. I want to say, if you are someone who is starting your journey or has been on your journey, either way, and you want to have more conversations or you want to know whatever questions, I don't know, or just make a connection, like reach out, because I think too, it's important to have community. We have a space down in Logan Heights on Logan Avenue, and we come across a lot of artists. And we do a Chicana show yearly. This year I didn't do it because we're all showing here, most of us. But we also have had shows there. And the reason that I'm saying this is because that space is for you. That space is for you. The work that I do is for you. If you have any questions for me as a Chicana artist, like I am open to whatever, like, whatever, if it's technique, if it's muralism, if it's, polytab, I don't know, whatever that is, like I'm open to sharing, and I'm open to sharing journey too, and open to inviting you to show in our space, or talking about what your goal is. Like, everyone has different goals. I have seen many artists go into different spaces and travel and show in all kinds of spaces, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So I want to say that, because I don't want to continue the conversation without saying, like, hey, if you're listening but you are wanting to find Chicana community, like, come through.
Yeah, there's resources, and I think the more open we are to sharing, the better, especially because art is a journey. And, no matter how much you think there's always still more to learn. And you shouldn't let, these institutions or, all these rules about art stop you from creating art,
Yeah.
Or following the process, or feeling like you're not good enough. Like, art is a practice. Like, no matter what, art is a practice. Any like technique like can be learned. It's just a matter of diligence, and showing up for yourself. And so, if you're at the beginning of your journey, just keep going, just paper, crayons, lo que sea.
Yeah. I don't know what time we have.
2:17. ¿Quieres otro o ya?
No, I think if anyone has questions for us now, otherwise we will go into the gallery and start with Rocio and her beautiful pieces. But if anyone has questions,
Pláticas that you all have had, like how has been like cómo las han recibido aquí en Escondido, just knowing the historical context that Escondido is this very place, very xenophobic, very anti-raza, very anti-brown people, even though we're 51%, right? This is not like, por ejemplo, I wouldn't say the Center for the Arts is necessarily a community space or a raza space. So it's really interesting that in the last couple of years, they really have put on, or maybe there's grants out there that have allowed for the work to come into it. But how has the actual community around responded to that?
Our first Platica, which was a panel of 6 of the artists and Cihua and I were facilitating, was very well attended. I think there was 20 chairs out, and then there was 20 more that had to be put out about in this space. And our next one was the
meditation.
It was talk about ancestral connection and meditation, and it was very well attended as well. I think we filled just about every seat.
And it was
that you're
very
seeing here.
diverse.
And it was very diverse. And this is our last one. I do want to say a few things about this. I was called to organize and program the space from 1 to 3 over whatever these weekends are, as long as our show is up. We are here doing this, and we're not being paid for this time or anything. There's no grants happening, but we know the importance of taking up this space, whether it's just us here or, and also recording it and showing people like we're in this space, we're taking up space, we're taking up space, we're taking up space, But it's interesting because I think that I don't know the history of Escondido. I didn't grow up here. But what I have seen as far as the center goes, and specifically Roxanne, the director here, she has been very open to allowing us to do basically whatever we want. We didn't have to give in detail what we were going to be talking about or what the meditation was like, or that I was going to be handing out rose oil or whatever we did, and including these questions. Like, there has been no demand or no like overseeing of what we're doing, which is amazing, and we're taking full advantage of it. This is our last plática. And see, when I talk continuously about like, we should have more pláticas, we should do more. But it's one of these things where, because the exhibition is here, we felt necessary to do this. And so if you follow their page, you're going to see that other Chicanas are also activating the space, including a block party next Saturday on the 27th. So other women are coming in and also doing work. This is just what I called Cihua, and I was like, okay, you're going to have to do this with me. And so, I was like, we're going to partner up. Maybe it'll feel like let's work, because at the end of the day, like, we're showing up for a community. We're showing up for other artists. Like, it's work. It's work for everyone. So, it's one of these things where it's enjoyable, and we're so happy that we did it. And, it's bittersweet. But Escondido has been, I think people have come out and people have mentioned in every single one of those pláticas that they're glad that it's happening here in Escondido, because it never does. So we have heard that.
I want to share that it's been very diverse, and we have someone here that's been here to all 3 of our pláticas, and she's been engaged, and she's expressed how much she's liked it, and maybe she can speak to it if she would like to in a minute. I also want to share that I'm not from here either, but my partner grew up around here. He's from the Valley, and also he had like most of his like, I guess, like high school life out here, and his kids, they've also spent some time living out here. And so, but they used to be brought here to this center when they were young, when they were little. They're still little, but they're now 10 and 12. And when I let them know, like, oh, my art's going to be here, they were just so amazed and in awe, like, wow, your art's going to be there. I know that place. And so I know that it was really impactful for them, to like also see their own possibilities, what's possible for them, and in a lot of ways, this is opening doors. And as much as, we could sit here and be angry about the past and the way that has been, and especially right now with everything going on, like, I think it's more productive to look at what we're doing now to change things, that it's happening now. Like, yeah, is it late? Is it long overdue? Pues ya sabes. Pero aquí estamos, where things need to change, and this is evidence that things are changing, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing for all of us. It's at the end of the day, it's for all of us. We get share to share in a curated space, what we love and what makes us us, and to be received. And honestly, everybody in the audience has been so kind, loving, interested, very respectful with our culture and, what we've shared. And so it's been really beautiful. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I actually grew up right here in Washington, and I was born at the Palomar Hospital. And then I went to Conway, and I went to Lincoln Elementary. I find this so important for Escondido. Like, this is amazing that this is going on. Like, so I grew up till I was like 12 here. I still have family here. My abuela lives over there, and then I have cousins over there, but more east from here. I find this so important because I've seen both sides. Like, I grew up here, but then we got into low income housing in Carlsbad, which is like suburban area. And so I kind of lost that little, like, the Mexican in me, or whatever you may say, because it wasn't really something proud that, like, my parents were like, we're Mexican, because it's Escondido. It's named Escondido for a reason, because everybody tends to hide, or, if someone knocks on the door, who is it? We're not expecting anyone. You hide. And so I grew up that way. I was like, someone's at the door, like, you hide, who's at the door? But when I moved to Carlsbad, I would say I got a little whitewashed, right? So I grew up both. I'm Mexican, but then I'm whitewashed. And so I find this really important to kind of connect my roots back to here, and also to I think it's beautiful what you guys are doing. My friend Adrian, he does the movement, and he's done events here, and he hosted one for Natalia Leforcate, which I was part of, and I thought that was amazing. I was like, in Escondido? Like, what the heck? It's not really a small town, but it feels that way. My mom didn't have a car, so we couldn't go. We walked everywhere. We walked from I lived behind Food for Less. Like, we walked everywhere here. And so this is beautiful, because as a little girl, if I would have walked in here, I think I would have been someone different. And I think I would have gone into art. I would have gone into my art sooner. But for me, I always took art classes, but I never took it serious until, like, later on in my years. And then after I started drawing, my mom's like, I'm an artist too. And I was like, no way, Mom. She's like, yeah, I do little dibujos because she's a nanny. And I was like, Mom, is this where I get it from? My sister draws. My other little sister's a great artist. And I was like, Mom, like, you never told me. She's like, I always wanted to illustrate kids' books. So my purpose in life is to do that for my mom and honor her, because she didn't get to do that. And living in Escondido, she worked so. My mom would pick up cans because my dad was so mean. He was a mean guy, but he's like, you need to find work if you want to feed your kids. And so my mom would have me, and we would pick up cans, crush them, and then go over here by the swap meet. There's like a can place, and that's how she would feed us. So I make art for my mom and to honor her, and I can't wait to bring her in here, because I feel like a lot of our older generation lost that child in them, and I just want to honor my mom. So I'm so happy you guys are here, and yeah, it's so cool to see everyone. So, and I hope to, like, really connect with you guys, because I like that a lot. I want to, like, stay inside and just, like, so I found it so important to come here. I was like, I'm from Escondido, and I want to meet and I just want to meet people, and especially in the Chicana community, because I lack that a lot. And maybe it's because I'm kind of self-conscious because I sound a certain way, or And so, because honestly, my family always makes fun of me. They're like, tú eres esto, tú eres güera, my dad would be like, you're not even Mexican. And I was like, so I grew up that, so I have to unravel all that, like, oh, am I Mexican enough? And yeah, so I am Mexican enough and I am Chicana enough. So yeah.
Thank you for
Thank you guys for
sharing.
thank you guys.
Yeah, I want to say that we have the Chicano Park book illustrator right here. That's Mayra. So if you guys have ever seen the Chicano Park book, Mayra's also a Chicano Park muralist, and so is Cihua. We've painted in the park together, which is amazing. But I just want so you can connect because she has illustrated a children's book, a very important one. Mhm. Yeah.
Did you want to share anything about the pláticas?
I don't know. I will. I don't know. Yes. So my name is Julie, and I have been coming because my husband's Boliviano and he's indigenous Boliviano, and so I have a daughter, and so obviously she's a bit bicultural. But I really feel like for my white part of my family, I've been able to show up for her. But I really love that that like when you say things like we are here and we're not going anywhere and we take up space. I'm really glad you're taking up that space because she needs that space also, and that's a part of space that I can't provide. I would like to provide, but it's not. It's not. I'm not able to. So I love this for her and for me. It's beautiful too, but for her, really. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Mhm.
Yeah, do we have any final questions or anything before we move on into the gallery? Welcome.
All right.
Bueno,
I'm getting
pues.
antsy too. I need
Okay,
to get
we are now in the gallery and we have our first guest artist here that's going to talk about her work. Again, please refer to the PDF to see. So if you can introduce yourself.
My name is Rocio Villanueva, and first I wanted to say thank you everyone for being here. I would say that I am a new artist. I actually started art through art therapy. So I'm a mother of 4 kids too. And so I would say that I would start when I was in the military. I served in Iraq in 2006 and I got a brain injury from the service. And I also was assaulted in the military. So when I got out of the military, I really didn't have the support. And I did get help from the VA, but there was not the community that I see here. And so I started doing art therapy. And that's when I was introduced to ceramics with clay. And the first time I ever touched the clay, I mean, I felt like I was going back in time and like feeling my ancestors kind of guide me through. I'm not gonna lie, at the beginning it was kind of difficult because I mean, clay becomes whatever you feel that day. So if your day is not a good day, then you will not have a successful day. And so I started doing art and therapy, and eventually I went back to school and I did my my career in ceramics. And right now I advocate for female veterans, be more specific, Chicanas that are going through the same things that I went through. It's still a little bit difficult to talk about things like that because I'm still feel like I'm processing things. So my journey has been almost 20 years. I still go back to the VA and I see trauma therapy and different types of healing. But most of my art has been in different galleries, but it's always being veteran, like a veteran community. I have never had an opportunity to be part of something like this. It's always kind of like, it almost feels like I'm the exotic person. And and so just to be here it feels so welcoming and so beautiful, so empowering, and like you just feel the feminine energy everywhere. and and so yeah, I made this saumeros. I made him three for the in representation of the three, like the Holy Spirit, God and Jesus. And then I made the corn in representing of Madre del Maíz, which is also represents life and my culture. So I don't know if you guys have any questions, but also clay has brought me back to my community. My great grandma was indigenous, and for many years I also felt like I lost my culture because and when I was stationed in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, there was years where I couldn't really speak Spanish, and so I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore. And so it has been a journey. I feel like, there's still a lot of things to process for me. But the reason why I feel like I'm here is because I want to be the person that helps my daughters too. I want them to be proud of where they come from. I want them to be proud of their roots, and I want to help other female veterans that are going through difficult things and they don't have the community. And I think this is gonna be really helpful. Sorry, I get a little bit emotional, but I'm really grateful for everyone that came. I don't know if you guys have any questions.
I do. I want to ask you specifically about the artwork here on display. You chose to represent the Saumerios or Samadors, and people call them Poposhkomil. Could you speak a little bit more, to what they are for those that are listening that may not know what it is and or what they represent for you? Because everybody has a different relationship with the Samador. And yes.
Okay. So I will say that they really represent to me the ceremonial part of my healing. Now that I started doing Aztec dancing with our community, our local community here in Escondido, I have learned that through the fire we connect to the divine. And so I feel like it's a tool for us to not only connect to the divine, but also to heal and to be present. So it helps us also protect the energy. So I feel like really connected to them.
Well, I think it's beautiful. You're on this podcast is offerings of Copal, and the logo is the Samador too. So I think it's important to, like, when talking about a fire vessel, and then it's a vessel made by fire, and fire carries the spirit, and how it's been such a beautiful tool for your healing, and it's something that is ancestral, for us and our people. And I'm just me personally, I'm really happy to see them physically here and part of this exhibition. Do we have any questions here from our audience? Oh, okay.
I don't really have a question, but I'm glad you're doing the work to reconnect with your cultura, your culture, and your roots. I think it's really important work, and especially in the context in where we're in the United States. So glad to hear that you're finding or healing through art as well, and our own cultural practices, and in your own through your own culture as well. So thank you for sharing more and being here with us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you have any additional?
When I first saw these, I was like, wow, that's amazing. I wonder who the artist is. But for me also, the Samerio represents culture and ancestral connection more than anything. And of course that, healing comes through there. But it's, when I first learned about burning copal, and I'm not a samadora, and I'm not a firekeeper, but I do have my own saumerio. And when I first learned how to light it and use it for myself, as my daily ritual, or if I'm cleansing my own spaces, one of the things that I was just so excited about was that this copal smoke is how the prayers reach our ancestors in the heavens. And to me, that just meant everything, because then that meant I could tell them whatever I wanted. And so to me, that's what it represents. And I think it's so beautiful that it's here, because obviously we lit a somerio for the past two platicas, and, for the guidance, and, to keep the fire, Cihua kept the fire. But the fact that they're present here at all times is important. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And usually it is supposed to be the saumerio. It shouldn't be like sitting on the floor. So you have to have like even a cloth or something underneath. But so that, just for reference, something that I didn't know, but before I started doing Aztec dancing. And so it's besides the person that is in charge of the Salvador, like their job is to keep the fire on. So when even in practice, when we're doing practice, even if it's not a ceremony, like the person in charge of it, Samadora, has to be there putting the fire. And the most impressive thing I've seen is like sometimes we'll bring, like, people will show up and then the fire will go off. And it's like just to see that physically happening, and you see the Samadora working on it, keeping the fire on through the whole ceremony. It's so beautiful because you feel it, and then you feel it every time you are all. It's like we'll always do a circle, and when we do the circle and we're all dancing the same time, it's like a connection. I really hope you guys get a chance to, reach out to your communities. And I think there's like a danza group on each city, but I know there's one in San Diego. Here in Escondido, we have another one. And up north, I know in LA there's so many.
Yeah, yes, to Cihua again. I have been collecting calpulis. I'm a person that initiated the Danza Azteca directory. And so we reach up to 52 different calpulis all over the states. But I unfortunately had to take the directory down. No one asked me to, but it's something I did because of the current administration. I didn't want my directory to be used as a tool against us. But there are calpulis everywhere, everywhere, like all over the states, and it's beautiful. It's powerful for those that are called. I think it's a great place to begin your journey, and it will ultimately take you exactly where you need to be if it calls to you, because I also don't think that danza azteca has all the answers. I think that if you listen to the little voice within you, it'll lead you to the right places. But of course, I'm also biased. I'm a dancer too, and keeping the samador like lit at all times. You're absolutely right. It is a container of energy, and the samador is something that is alive. Once you initiate the samador with a lit fire, it becomes your child. It's a baby, and you actually have to go through a whole process in order to even prepare salmerio to even be lit. You have to bury it in the earth, and you have to wait, and then you have to put it in water, and you have to wait, and just like you wait for your baby. And so yeah, yeah, for I don't know, if there's people looking for the directory, you can message me. I may or may not look for you in the directory, but most of the time, see. Just depends on what my load is. Pero yeah, is there any final comentarios? Lista? Okay. Okay. We are now at the side of where my paintings are. This is Cihua speaking, and I'm just going to show which of the paintings I submitted. I actually just submitted my portfolio, and she told me, "Oh, bring all of these." So it wasn't like I want all of these. I was just like, okay, I'll bring them. But this is one of mine. This is a painting of Coyol Shauki. This is probably the oldest piece that I brought here. This was made in 2019. This is a watercolor kind of mixed media. If you look closer, you have these little stars that was made with acrylic paint. But this was a sort of recreation of the Coyol Shauki stone. And it was post myself joining Danza Azteca or Danza Mexica, Danza Mexica Chichimeca. And it was, I think, beginning a process of looking at my own healing. And for me, like, Goyo Shauki was one of the first like feminine teot that I like connected with, besides like Huatlicue. And mainly because she's a moon goddess and she's more nocturnal, and I've always been attracted to more like darker imagery, and things that are of the nighttime. And so I recreated her, and in her dismembered state, just like the stone. And to me, like the dismemberment represents the different phases of the moon. So for those that don't know her story, I won't tell her whole story, but she pretty much went on a quest to try and like fight her mother or destroy her mother after her mother had become like pregnant. And she kind of chased her up into the mountains, and in the mountains that her mother Coatlicue heard a voice inside of her, and it was her newborn Huitzilopochtli, and he said that he would protect her. And so he emerged from her womb in full regalia in order to face Coyolxauhqui. And when he faced Coyolxauhqui, he beat her and he sort of dismembered her and threw her over the mountain, right? And then she became the moon. And so this is a story that tells it's the story of how the sun and the moon essentially trade places. In the morning, Coyolxauhqui is the one that beats Huitzilopochtli, and then he gets destroyed. And so on and on, this battle goes on every day, but I feel that this painting was sort of captured the dismembered state of like healing or being in broken pieces, and it was part of my healing journey. But so I did that painting, and then which one came next? Probably this one. I didn't do all of these. Okay, I did those two and these three right here. This one's called Ofrenda, and this is an oil painting. And this one was never meant to be anything serious. I hadn't painted since probably then, and I had been in a block, and I'm like, I had this giant canvas, and I'm just gonna take it out and paint it. And so I was this was this was right after I had been initiated into the keeping the Samador or the Samerio, into fire keeping, and it represented my commitment to the fire, my commitment to the path. And it was a commitment that I made to the fire itself. It wasn't about the calpuli. It wasn't about anything other than, okay, I'm going to take this role seriously. And so it was about the ofrenda. Like that is the ofrenda, is to stick it through no matter what. And when you hold fire, you're going to get burned. That's part of the lesson. And so this painting represents that moment of ofrenda, of prayer. Is, as you can see, when the smoke rises, it's a very like fantasy like image. There's the Milky Way, but if you look closer, like the smoke kind of turns into this like bird. Some people say it's an eagle, some people see a crow, some people see a phoenix, whatever it may be, maybe even a quetzal. But the smoke sort of turns into this bird that you can see within the Milky Way. And yeah, so that's that painting. And then this one is Reign of Tlaloc. Is an exploration of like spirituality, and like all of these really are about like the feminine path of spirituality. If we look into our codices, they often show like the masculine, so much of the like masculine like path to things. And though there's so many like feminine goddesses, they're present, but there were priestesses. There weren't just like priests, and priests and priestesses. Apologize for the language. That's just the language. That's the only way we can translate it. But there were women, spirit women, like medicine women, that were also dedicated to the keeping of the traditions of the gods and all of that. And so this was a representation of a priestess of Tlaloc. And so she has the imagery of Tlaloc, and he has his headdress and his feathers, and he has the shukoat, or she has the shukoat, which is his arma, which represents like truth and like divine justice. And so it's like living an embodiment of that and that integrity. And obviously it's raining because Tlaloc is the god of rain, and from her crown bursts life. So it's just like all the fertility of creativity. To be a priestess of Tlaloc, or a woman dedicated to Tlaloc, is to be dedicated to the arts, is to be dedicated to growth and and nourishing everything that she comes in path with. So that's that one. And then I think this one is next. This one was made in 2023. So this is both this one and that one are oil. And then this is watercolor, and then this is watercolor. I was kind of stuck doing watercolor for a while due to limited space. And before that, I had space for oil paintings. You kind of have to leave them out to dry because they take days, weeks. A watercolor was a little bit more accessible space wise, but I do enjoy it. And so, and then my watercolor style is like very like controlled, which is not how you're supposed to paint with watercolor. But so this is watercolor and a little bit of acrylic on top. And this you can see the shift from my samador, my poposhkomil, from, well, before I was using like a black one. And then my new poposhkomil is one that carries the face of Huehueteot, which is our eldest abuelo. He's the ancient fire. He's the one that represents essentially the Big Bang from which all originated from in the creation story. He's at the center of the universe. And so this painting came as a result after like the communities I had connected with. I was able, like when you hold the fire, as I explained earlier, you not only hold the good energy, but you also have to hold the stuff that isn't so great, the things that are difficult about group dynamics. And so this to me represented dealing the aftermath of burning. And and so from here you can see an image of a woman rising from the fire. And so for me it was me rising from being burned in the context of these communities that I had been a part of. And and so after this, I took a hiatus from danza, from things, and sort of focused more on my own art. Like this has been honestly like a journey of like 6 years, really, like right around time danza started. And so you can see like my own like spiritual like opening, or there's a word, unfurling, yeah, the unfurling in the process. And so after this, I took a 2-year hiatus from that and just focused on art, focused on continuing to learn, but on my own. And then this is the final painting here, my most recent one. And this is right after I joined danza again. So I started giving it another go. And this was a moment that was captured by my partner. He took a picture. So this is a painting of a picture of me putting on my ayayotes, getting ready for danza. I think it had been the first danza in those 2 years, with my regalia. And so that sort of captured this moment of hesitancy, but also newness, initiation. Let's try this again. And now this is an acrylic. And you could see how my art has evolved from then, so trying to meet this middle ground between being expressive and controlled. But yeah, that's my art on these walls. Mhm.
Does anyone have any questions? She's very thorough, I know. Okay.
Okay.
So Siwa is someone that I've known for some time now. And when I saw what she could do in so many different mediums, I was like, I was impressed, because she doesn't only, paint in oil or watercolor or acrylic. She also makes jewelry, amazing jewelry, for any of you that know. She's just so multifaceted. And as an artist, I was like, wow. And so we've had the honor of seeing Siwa's work up on our walls. And she was one of the first people that I thought about when this show was being put together, because I really feel like, people need to see your work. It tells a story every time, as many pieces do, but the connection, I think that, like, Chicana artists, a lot of us want to paint diosas. I have my share of diosas I've painted. I see other women here who have painted their diosas, and it's the renderings are always beautiful. And the beauty of Siwa's work, in my opinion, is that she has the whole backstory, as you all saw. So if there's anyone that you're wanting to learn from, she does a lot of work around, the days and each day and which essence is being carried that day. She also reads tarot in an amazing way, but it's that you're seeing, translated into her work. It's beautiful, friend.
Oh, Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for listening and witnessing. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We're almost done. One more,
Yeah.
guys, which
Saving the best for last. Go ahead.
nah.
No. No.
So as I mentioned earlier today, I've been painting since I was 14 years old. And I have artwork dated as old as about 2003. But when we opened up our gallery space at San Libre, I had a closing show of work that I've painted from early showings up until probably last year. And I decided that I wasn't going to show those pieces anymore. I decided that if I was invited to a show, to an exhibition, that I was going to paint something new every time. And so I don't have other artwork to show at the moment. And I've created a few pieces here and there, and I've painted a few murals since. But this is the piece that I chose to come with me. And so I painted this in 2024. And I just want to say that, as an artist, we evolve and we keep evolving, and I can see the evolution in my work. And sometimes people don't want to show their early work because they feel like, oh, I was just learning. It's not even good enough or whatever that may be. But what I have found, and one of the things that my husband is really good at reminding me, is that those years of training and preparing you should also count those. Some people are like new artists and they're like, oh, I only have these pieces because you're the most proud of those. But the truth is that the journey has been, since those moments, those early moments where you've learned the technique or whatever that may be. And so in this show, even though it's a Chicana show, what I proposed is this piece, which is called Yo Soy Joaquin, after a poem, if you all know it, by Corky Gonzalez, where he talks about him being part Spanish and part indigenous, and how, he lives in this world that is, colonized. It's a very long poem and it's very beautiful. I named my son, who you're seeing in this portrait, after that poem. His name is Pedro Joaquin. And so I decided that I was going to paint Pedro. And my submission to Dulce Stein, the curator, was very much about, a Chicana mother raising a young Chicano. At the end of the day, Chicana is a self-declaration, but he has all of the tools for that self-declaration. He is Chicano. He, I hope, is going to be a major activist. When my kids were really young, people would ask us, I'm assuming they ask about Camila, what do you want your child to be? And my answer was always, I want my children to be activists. I don't care what else they do. But when you're an activist, you have this compassion, and it's raising children as a Chicana mother isn't an easy thing because people won't agree with you taking your children to a protest. Oh, that's so dangerous. Why would you do that to your child? And it's like, we're going to protect them by all means necessary. It's not that they may be in danger, but we're also not going to put them in that kind of danger. But they do have to learn. They do have to see the world for what it is, as ugly as it is. And, oh, but it's just a child. Like, maybe you should wait till they're older. No, there's joy in their life too. They don't just live in this space of struggle. We also celebrate who they are. And so this is a portrait of my son, Pedro. And what I did is I placed him on one of the pyramids, or a piece of the pyramid, which you're seeing in the background. And this is all acrylic. And what I do is, when I worked in Chicano Park, I had the pleasure of working with Salvador Barajas, who is what I call a master muralist because his portraits are amazing. And so Sal Barajas taught me the grid system. And so Sal Barajas will take a 40-foot pillar and grid the whole thing. They'll prime it first. It'll be all white. And then he'll grid the whole thing into 2x2 squares. And he knows exactly what goes where. And so when I do portraits, I used to try to do them freehand. That never works out. So now I grid everything. This is a specific piece that I did grid and then sketched on. and then layered and layered and layered. And one of the things that I learned in working in the park was using this specific technique with Nova Gel, which gives it this glossy finish, but also allows for even more layers. So what you're seeing here is about 6 layers of paint, including the blending in the face and the blending in the skin. So what I do is when I grid and I like, let's say I'm going to hit, part of like the shadows on his neck, I'll hit the dark, then I'll hit the light, then I'll find a medium color and wash it over, and then I'll start again. And so I just continue to go on and on with that. These orbs, these are orbs, are representations of his guidance and his ancestors. And I knew what I was doing in this piece, but when these orbs first presented themselves for me to paint, I'm going to say these ancestors first presented themselves for me to paint, was on a mural that I was going to be doing of my husband for the airport, which we just finalized. And so in this piece, I thought, oh, and this is interesting. This is how ancestral connection and ancestral guidance works, for me at least. In my mind, I was like, oh, okay, I have this idea that I'm going to make this really abstract and colorful by adding these colorful circles, right? These colorful circles, I'm going to put them on there. So I started doing the painting and I started to put the colorful circles on there. And then as I step back, because as an artist, like you've got to step back, you got to take pictures of the progress, you got to compare, you got to do all that stuff. When I stepped back, I realized that those weren't just colorful circles. I was trying to go a little bit more colorful and abstract. And what I realized is that they were orbs that are now going to live in my work forever. They're going to show up in every piece that I do moving forward. And so this is the second piece where it was very clear that he needed to have this essence of him being surrounded by these orbs, protected by these orbs. And of course, that's my child. So I'm like, he's my baby. So, he's my 18-year-old baby. But it's very much like this is exactly what I want for him. This is exactly what I want for him in his life, to be protected, to know his culture, to be proud, to be who he is. Yeah. But this is my one very, very proud piece. That's it for me.
Do we have any questions, comments? Yeah, I could talk.
Yeah, I think I really liked how you incorporated the orbs piece, because I think our ancestors are always walking with us. So I think even just seeing that in a physical representation in this artwork really speaks to me, in the sense that I'm always carrying my ancestors with me and I'm always being protected. But at times there are some that are not so helpful. So I'm carrying
Yes.
both. Yeah, and I really like the piece and how there's just like a lot of protection for him, and you're representing that. And yeah, I'm glad I'm here, witnessing everyone, but also witnessing and getting more context as to why you did what you did. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Here we go. One more.
I really love the shoes because it really connects to this new generation. Like I know, like I have 4 kids and I have 3 teenagers and then a 10-year-old. And I know that if they were to be here and they see that art piece, they will connect. I know they'll go straight to the shoes, but they'll see themselves in it. And it's not something that they will see, oh, this is representing from back in the day. This is actually bringing them to here and they can actually connect to it. So I really love to see that on it.
Thank you. Yeah, I should have left the Five Nights at Freddy's t-shirt that he was wearing. That would have really connected. But I thought like, oh, maybe I'm going to paint something on his t-shirt. But no, but it's important, I think, for our children to walk through these spaces and see themselves.
Yes.
See themselves and continuously see themselves. And as far as like the essence and the orbs, like, yes, our ancestors are always walking with us, but it's so hard to represent, like visually represent it if you're not like familiar with the Quetzalcoatl, or that's a pyramid, or if you don't know more about it, it's hard to see. And people may just think like, oh, those are cute colors, circles, maybe they're bubbles, but once you hear their orbs and their ancestors, it clicks and you go, oh, okay, I get it. I get the concept. Thank you.
Beautiful. Any more comments?
I think for me, it's just, I know Patricia talks a lot about the space they have down in Chicano Park, which, I think that I've learned a lot about Patricia and Lucas through my daughter because she has attended the different workshops that you guys hold in that space, and the importance of art in those spaces, I think, is super important. The formation of identity outside of like the institutions, but then reclaiming this institution as our own, right? Is super important. So just thank you for bringing it here, because now it's like I don't have to drive 35 minutes down the freeway to access community or to feel like at home, right? So it's just continuously creating those spaces for our families to belong. So thank you.
Mhm. And if there's anyone that's listening or anyone here that is opening up a space in a place that maybe is not so welcoming or is thinking about it, you can reach out and see how we're doing it. It's a huge commitment to rent a space. It's a huge risk, obviously, to rent a space and have it become, we always say it becomes whatever it wants to. But in the space, it's called Aslan Libre. We have had art shows, police brutality panels, and community come through. We have food distributions. We have a Somos Chicanos Chicanas camp for the youth. We have a youth group called the Aslan Youth Brigade. We've had resume workshops. Oh my gosh, we have held space for our community when loved ones have passed away. We've held, fires for days. We do our own Dia de Muertos. We have ofrendas. We have I've done grief groups. We sound bath. I don't know, everything. And we have a vendor market happening right now as we speak. So that space, if anyone is wanting to open up their own, as part of like why we speak so freely about self-determination, because we're like in it. We are in it. Like, talk about creating spaces outside of institutions in a barrio. Like, we're in it right now, and we don't know how long we're going to have the space for, and we're okay if something changes, but we're there. We're there, and we're there until the wheels fall off, really. Like, that's our commitment for our community and for our people, and everyone is welcome. It's beautiful that we step outside and I can see Chicano Park right there. Like, we're half a block away from the park. That's a beautiful thing, but more community spaces like this one, or even bigger, should be created in different barrios. Like, it's so necessary for all of us, and we see it here because we put out the flyer for this plática Wednesday.
Just
Tuesday. And here you all are. I mean, had we done it with more time, we're super busy, so we didn't. But had we done it with more time, it would have been attended probably, more people would have heard about it, and it would have been, a bigger attendance. And that doesn't matter to us. But the past pláticas, people have shown us what the need here in Escondido is. And there's, just like in Escondido, there's need in so many barrios throughout Aslan. And so if anyone is wanting to do that kind of work, like, let us know. The next thing we have coming up for Camila is we have Day of the Dead youth camp for 3 days. And so it's just something like, if you want to give back and if you're trying to find a home, like, come join us, come see what we do. We're very open about it, and we welcome everyone. So please come through.
I just want to comment, on Patricia's work. We're always joking that we're each other's like greatest fans. We're always gassing each other up. But, something I love about Patricia is that there is no separation, between the work that she does. And, I'm sitting here, I'm like thinking, I'm like, what's the word? What's the word? And to me, I think it's continuity. There is this, it's not just about now, it's how is this going to like propagate onward? How is this going to be, how is this going to help future generations? It's always about community and continuity. And I think it's especially apparent in this work. You can see there's this ancestral background. He's surrounded by ancestors, but he's also the future, and I think something it's really important to talk about, especially in this exhibition, is, it being a Chicana centered exhibition, is that the relationship with like motherhood, in children, that's such a part of the feminine experience, is how do we nurture those future generations, and I think that not only is your work like a beautiful portrayal of that, but also in the way that you talk about it, not just the work, but also your other children, in community, it's really, it is.
Lucas's kids. Those are
Yeah.
all his kids. No, I'm kidding.
The youth, but like it's beautiful to see, like, even the faces here, it's people that I know,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah. We're here for it, guys. Let us know. Reach out. Let us know how we can help. You know, I mean, we don't have a whole lot of time, but we do believe in creating a movement for our barrio, for other barrios, in any barrio. Like, we need this. I think it's very obvious. Like, we need this as, raza who's trying to reconnect and become stronger at the moment too, to unite, to be at the forefront of whatever's coming.
I think on that note, I think to bring things to a close, I think it is about community. I think that we got to start putting our differences aside. So many people online fighting about definitions, what is Chicano, Latino, no sabo, all these different things. And, you know, like assimilation, all these different things. And especially in this current climate, we got to stop, fighting over dumb things and come together, porque it's bigger than our little differences, or even all of our different subcultures. When you look around, you see all the different things that we're all into that are also part of the Chicano movement, the lowriders, the Adelitas over there, the indigenous components, all these different things kind of represent these other facets of it, but we can't use those things to divide us, and we got to start coming together and building these communities, porque si no. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for being here.
So, great. So, Tlasakamati to everybody listening out there in the waves. We're grateful for your time and energy, and just leave us a comment. Feel free to share this with anyone who may value this plática, and don't forget to follow at Aztlan Libre. And you guys already know how to find me since you found this podcast. Bueno, pues, bye bye.